Welcome to a quiet evening. Tonight, before you drift off to sleep, we'll take a journey together into the distant past, to a land of cold winds and snow, where dragon-headed ships crossed vast oceans, and people lived amidst white winters and flickering flames. They were known as the Vikings. But don't worry, you don't need to prepare anything. Just lie down, let your body relax, and allow all your worries to melt away like breath in the air. Imagine yourself inside a small wooden cabin, its walls made of hand-carved logs, scented with pine and the warm ash of a fire burning since late afternoon. Outside, the snowy forest stands still, while a gentle wind brushes through the trees. Inside, you're wrapped in a soft fur blanket, leaning back against a straw-filled pillow, your eyes half closed, your ears tuned to an ancient story beginning to unfold. You might hear the soft crackle of the fire, the gentle sigh of wind against the roof, and a voice, slow and calm, like a small stream flowing through mountain rocks. No rush, no pressure, just a river of time flowing backward, thousands of years into the past. Take a deep breath in, and slowly let it out. Now allow your mind to drift, like a quiet boat gliding across a frozen lake. No oars, no sail, just drifting with the wind and the moonlight. Leave behind the day that has passed. Everything left to do, every unanswered question, they'll stay behind. You're no longer here. You're beginning a journey into another world. A world where time flows slower, where people live in harmony with nature, where there are no phones, no social media, only forest, snow, fire, and stories passed down through generations. Tonight's story isn't about conquest or war, not about glory or bloodshed. It's about the ordinary moments of Viking life, about a winter morning in a coastal village, the sound of a blacksmith's hammer, the smell of freshly cooked oat porridge, and Viking children playing in the snow. You'll hear dreams, long journeys, and strange old legends told by elders beside the fire each night. If your eyelids begin to feel heavy, that's perfectly okay. This story isn't meant to be finished. It will stay with you, like a lullaby once sung by your mother, gently carrying you into a peaceful sleep. So now close your eyes, rest your head upon the pillow, and listen as the first light of day slips through the wooden slats of the roof. The small Viking fishing village by the frozen bay begins to wake. The winter sun does not rise high. Just a thin strand of golden light glides softly across the snow. The sky is a gentle blue-gray, and the air is so cold and pure you can almost smell the freshly fallen snow. In homes roofed with turf and thick oak beams, smoke begins to rise from small chimneys, carrying with it the scent of burning wood, oat porridge, and warm wool that dried by the fire overnight. A mother gently wakes her 3 young children, with a soft whisper in her voice. Wake up, the sun is knocking at the door. Outside, the father wears a fur-lined hat, holding a wooden axe, splitting firewood for the morning to keep the house warm. The sound of the axe striking the wood is firm and steady, echoing through the stillness of early morning. Not far away is the pen for goats and cattle. An 8-year-old Viking boy carries a metal pail, walking beside his mother to milk the old cow. Every morning, they speak to her. Good morning, Freya. Did you sleep well today? At the edge of the village, other men are preparing for a day at sea. The boat was covered with coarse cloth to keep off the snow the night before, ropes coiled neatly, and oars resting along the sides ready for use. The air smells of sea salt. The cold sneaks into sleeves, but no one complains. To them, this is life. Simple, yet bonded and full of meaning. You might see an old man with a white beard sitting on the doorstep, carving a wooden spoon handle with his knife. An old dog lies beside him, eyes half closed, occasionally letting out a long yawn. Inside, his wife sits by the loom, threading strands of sheep's wool, weaving a scarf for their youngest grandchild. The room is warm and dim, lit only by the golden flicker of the hearth dancing on the wooden walls. And in the quiet, you might hear the spinning wheel turning, spinning and spinning. The Vikings were not just warriors. That is the image history often remembers. But in truth, they were mostly farmers, fishermen, blacksmiths, carpenters, herders, men and women who loved their work and cherished their families. They grew barley, turnips, onions. In summer, they picked berries in the forest. In winter, they dried fish, salted meat, and stored food in deep earthen cellars. Every Viking was taught to be self-reliant, to mend clothes, to light a fire, to read the sky, and predict the weather, and most of all, to respect nature. They believed nature was part of the divine. The forest, the rivers, the sea, all had spirits. When they cut down a tree, they gave thanks. When they hunted a deer, they prayed for its soul to find peace. In the center of the village stood a great hall called the Longhouse, a place where people gathered when the wind turned harsh, where meals were shared, and stories were told through the darkness. At midday, the whole village would eat together. Oat porridge, dark bread, smoked fish. Each person had a small share, but it was enough and warm with care. Children laughed, adults spoke slowly, and everyone respected the stillness. There were afternoons when snow fell thick, and everyone stayed indoors. Children played bone games, women mended clothes, and the elders told stories of days long past. You might picture a child sitting in their grandmother's lap, eyes wide open, listening to tales of a Viking ship that once sailed through a snowstorm and met a giant whale that spoke in human tongue. But then the sky would darken again, and the little village would slip into quiet. Another day had passed. Within that simplicity, Viking life was full of connection. They had no electricity, no machines, but they had one another, and the peace that comes with living slowly and deeply. Can you hear it now? The wind rustling through the trees, the oar resting against the wooden steps, and your heart beating slower in the gentle embrace of a land asleep beneath the snow. One day, when thick fog still clung tightly to the surface of the sea, a young man named Leif stood at the prow of his ship, gazing far into the cold, blurry horizon. He was the son of an old sea captain, a man who had once sailed across all the northern seas, but now rested in the village, leaving his dragon ship for Leif to continue the journey. Leif was not like the other warriors. He didn't seek gold, nor thirst for battle. What he longed for was discovery, to explore lands no one had set foot on, new shores, unnamed rivers, and the peace he only felt when the ship drifted through the open sea. That morning, Leif quietly said goodbye to his mother. She placed her hand on his forehead and whispered, "Go, my son, and bring back the sea wind, so I may dream of distant places." The dragon ship, with its wolf-shaped prow long and sturdy, was carefully prepared: dry food, drinking water, salted fish, a small wood stove, thick furs for warmth, and a few spare planks for repairing the ship if needed. Leif's crew included 12 people, some childhood friends, a quiet blacksmith, and a young woman skilled at rowing and storytelling. On the first day, the sea was as calm as glass. The sun set slowly, leaving a red trail across the water. Night fell, and the sky filled with stars, each one known by name to the Vikings. They saw the stars as maps, guiding ships without need of compass. Leif lay on the side of the ship, looking up at the sky. He remembered his father's words. "You don't need to know where you're going. Just know that you are alive." By the third day, the waves grew fierce. White-crested swells as tall as rooftops crashed against the ship's sides. The wind howled like wild wolves in the night. At times, it felt as though the ship might capsize. But everyone held on, hands, shoulders, and faith. Leif did not panic. He pressed his lips together, eyes fixed on the waves, and whispered to himself, "I haven't found Vinland yet. I cannot turn back." After 3 stormy days, dawn broke. Before them stood black rocky cliffs and a cold, white beach. It was Iceland, the starting point of a grand adventure. In Iceland, they stayed for several weeks. The locals welcomed them with dried fish, barley bread, and stories colder than the ice. Nights were long, snow fell often, but Leif loved listening to the elders tell tales. Legends of talking glaciers, angry volcanoes, and spirits that lived in deep lakes. No one stayed behind. They all knew it was not the final destination. The ship sailed again. Next came Greenland, a vast land of ice mountains and fierce winds. Here, Leif met people who lived in snow year-round, built homes from stone and dry grass, drank water melted from glaciers, and lived by hunting seals and reindeer. An old man in Greenland told Leif, "Far to the west, very far, there's a land soft as moss, where green trees grow, sweet water flows year-round, and berries taste sweeter than honey." Leif believed him. After many months, they continued, sailing through drifting ice and thick fog. Then one day, they saw seabirds flying south, an ancient sign that land was near. They saw Vinland, the legendary land. Green grass, clear streams, a climate far milder. No one cheered. No one jumped with joy. They simply stepped onto the shore as if walking into a dream. Leif knelt down, touched the earth with his hand, eyes closed. He whispered, "This is peace." They didn't build a fort. They didn't rush to claim or conquer. They pitched a few simple wooden tents, planted test crops, fished, drank from streams, and let the Vinland wind blow through their hair, like a greeting from the earth and sky. At night, the fire lit up. Leif told his companions stories, of Iceland, of Greenland, and of dreams that had now come true. They named the hill, the stream, and the meadows. But there were no flags, no claims of land, because they had not come to possess. They had come to listen. After several months, winter began to arrive. They had to leave before the sea froze over. On the day of departure, Leif looked back at Vinland one last time. The grass was still green, birds still sang, and the sky that day was as clear as crystal. He turned to his crew and said softly, "We will return. But now, let's bring this story home." On the journey back, Leif recorded their travels on pieces of animal hide, drew maps with charcoal, and each night he recounted what they had seen to his crew, so no one would forget the land called peace. And so it went. The story of Leif slowly became legend, told beside fire pits for centuries to come. Until tonight, when you lie here, hearing it once again, as the long days slowly shortened, and winter covered the Viking village with snow as fine as flour. No one went to sea or worked the fields anymore. Night came early, and that was when, in every little turf-roofed house, the hearth glowed red again, and old stories were told to children tucked under straw-filled blankets. In a small house at the edge of the village, Grandmother Freydis, the eldest of all, sat by the fire, her hands knitting wool, surrounded by 3 wide-eyed grandchildren tucked up to their chins in covers. She gently stroked the youngest's hair, then smiled. "Tonight, I'll tell you about Odin, the one-eyed god, who sees through all 9 worlds." Her voice dropped low, slow as the wind whispering through the cracks in the door. Long ago, so long ago that snow had yet to blanket the north, the universe was nothing but empty void, no light, no sound. From that void, Yggdrasil, the world tree, grew. Its roots stretched deep into Niflheim, the realm of ice. Its crown reached up to Asgard, home of the gods. On its branches, snow deer grazed on leaves, a black dragon coiled around the roots. An ancient eagle lived at the highest tip, and the squirrel Ratatoska ran up and down, spreading gossip from branch to branch. Grandmother paused, raising her hand as if painting a picture of a colossal tree. The firelight danced on the walls, casting her shadow long, like a kind old witch. Odin, she continued, was the chief of all gods. He was wise, but never satisfied with his knowledge. He gave up his right eye to drink from Mimir's well of wisdom, a well hidden deep beneath the roots of Yggdrasil. Since then, Odin had only one eye, but that eye could see the past, the future, and what no one else could. She closed one eye, stepping into Odin's role, then slowly shook her head. "To know too much is not always a good thing, my dears." Then Odin hung himself from the world tree. 9 days and 9 nights, without food or drink, all to learn the runes, ancient symbols of magical power. She whispered, as if afraid to disturb the air itself. "Runes are not just letters. They open doors between worlds." A small child timidly asked, "Did it hurt, Grandma?" She smiled. "Yes, child. But just like when you learn to walk on snow without falling, sometimes we need pain to understand." Then she spoke of Thor, Odin's son, the god of thunder, who wielded the mighty hammer Mjolnir. Thor rode a chariot pulled by 2 goats, roaring like thunder across the Nordic sky. Every time Thor threw his hammer, it returned to his hand as if by magic. But Grandma paused for a moment, then said softly, "Thor was brave in battle, but not very clever, because strength often makes people forget to think." The children giggled. After Thor came Loki, the trickster god, half man, half deceiver. Loki could shapeshift into a horse, a fish, even an old woman. But his jokes sometimes led to great tragedies. Grandmother Freydis spoke in a steady tone, like waves lapping in the distance. It was Loki who gave birth to Fenrir, the giant wolf that will swallow the sun, and he is the father of Jormungandr, the sea serpent that coils around the world. But her voice never turned frightening. She spoke as if reading an old poem, and the children listened closely, without fear. Finally, she mentioned Ragnarok, the Viking end of the world. One day, the ice will melt, The wolf Fenrir will break free of his chains. Jormungandr will rise from the ocean, and Thor and the other gods will fight one last battle. Odin will fall, Thor too. The whole world will be consumed by fire and ice. She paused for a long time, then whispered, "But after Ragnarok, a new world will rise. Greener, more beautiful without war." The children lay completely still. No one asked another question. Perhaps they were imagining a forest growing from the ashes. Grandmother Freydis closed her eyes, quietly letting the yarn slip from her hands. The fire crackled. Outside, the snow continued to fall gently. The children were asleep, but their dreams were full of wonders. A glowing Yggdrasil standing tall in the northern sky. Odin flying through the air on his 8-legged horse Sleipnir, and Thor speeding across the snow with Mjolnir in hand. Behind him the mischievous laughter of Loki hiding beneath a mask. And on the snowy hill at the edge of the village, a mother sang a lullaby, using names passed down through countless ages. Odin, Thor, Loki, Yggdrasil, runes, Ragnarok, each name like a gentle breeze, brushing through the hair, lulling the whole village into a peaceful sleep. Outside, snowflakes continued to fall slowly. The wind swept over the frozen hills as if singing ancient songs. Winter had truly arrived. In the small village by the fjord, the Vikings didn't call it cold. They called it the sleep of the earth. Winter, a time for rest, for stillness, as if the whole world took one deep breath and lay quietly beneath a blanket of soft snow. When the ships were pulled ashore, they were wrapped in dry straw, covered in furs, to sleep through many months. Axes and hammers hung silently in the shed. Armor was folded into wooden chests. Horses were fed extra hay. And people ate more slowly, less meat, more porridge, more roasted turnips, more stewed roots. Each Viking house became a cocoon, warm, fire-lit, and filled with whispered stories. On the darkest nights, the sun peeked out only briefly, then vanished behind white mountains. Time wasn't measured by clocks, but by how often the soup pot was refilled, how many logs were added to the hearth, and by the steady breathing of loved ones sleeping nearby. A boy named Eirik often sat by the window, gazing into the endless whiteness. Whenever the snow covered the doorstep, he imagined it was the sea, and he was on a boat drifting toward the mist. His grandmother often soothed him with quiet words. "Don't fear the dark, Eirik, for in the dark, seeds begin to grow." The elders in the village told one another, winter is the lullaby of the gods. They said that beneath the snow, small creatures slept, bears in caves, fish in lakes, trees in the soil. Even the spirits of ancestors were sleeping, but still present, tucked into every wooden wall, sitting silently beside the glowing embers. An old blind man named Halder lived alone, but each night someone would visit. One brought him barley bread, another a bit of honey saved from summer. In return, he told stories in a raspy, warm voice, about nights when snow reached his knees, about winds that overturned boats before they left the shore, and about the time he dreamt of flying through the sky, the world below sparkling with snow like silver. Winter was also the season of memories. People remembered those who were no longer there. Their names were spoken gently in stories, sometimes just with a glance toward an empty chair by the fire. But there was no sadness, only a softness, like an exhale in the freezing air. In Viking homes, people were lulled to sleep by the breath of the wind. The wind whispered through wooden cracks with a hum, like the wind god telling fairy tales. Mothers sang to their children in deep tones. Fathers told stories in voices low as crackling wood. Grandmothers soothed grandchildren by stroking their hair, slow, steady, and sometimes without saying a word. In winter, people lived closer together. Neighbors visited each other, gathered around the fire in a circle, each bringing something small, a dried apple, an old story, a lullaby passed down from the grandmother of a grandmother. Few words were needed, just warmth and being together. Eirik fell asleep to the sound of his grandmother reading stories. In his dream, he was gliding across ice, his feet sliding over a frozen lake as smooth as glass. In the distance, the northern lights shimmered like silk. A white fox ran beside him, then turned into a laughing girl made of light. She reached out her hand and said, "This is the world where sleep is real, and the wind knows your name." The next morning, as the first light shone through the snow-covered roof, everyone woke at once. No bells, no alarms, Just everyone somehow knew it was time to open their eyes. Father lit the fire. Mother baked bread. Eirik washed his face with snow, then saw the first sparrows return. Perhaps winter was nearly over. Beneath the earth, seeds were slowly reaching outward. Inside people's hearts, hope was warming again. And in the deep sleep of winter, the Vikings did not dream of war or treasure. They dreamed of light, of peace, of laughter by the fire, and a stillness as calm as snow resting on rooftops at night. A quiet morning, the first light slips through the roof's crevice, gently touching the wooden floor, where the warmth of the night still lingers. Winter is already halfway through, and the dawn is returning. Leif, a warrior who once journeyed far, now sits by a small window. His hair is streaked with silver, but his eyes still hold the shimmer of the sea. His daughter Freya sits curled at his feet. She's still little, her hair a tangle of soft clouds, clutching a cloth doll sewn from her mother's old linen. "Tell me a story, Papa." She looks up and whispers, as if afraid to disturb the stillness of morning. Leif smiles. His voice is deep and steady, like waves lapping gently against an old ship's hull. "Long ago, I sailed far away. On an oak longship carved with dragon's head, I crossed storm, snow, seeking a new land." Freya's eyes grow round. "And then, were there monsters?" Leif chuckles softly. "There were, but not dragons. It was homesickness. You see, the hardest part wasn't the wind, the ice, or the wild sea. It was the lonely nights, when your mother's songs no longer echoed in my ears." Freya didn't understand at all, but she buried her face into the fur pillow, listening with her young heart. Leif told her about the shores of Vinland, where trees grew close to the coast, birds sang strange songs, and the wind was warm, like a summer that never ends. What I remember most was the moment I touched the soil, smelled the damp grass, and knew I had truly lived a full journey. His voice slowed. "But then I came home, because what I sought was not out there. It was here in your eyes, in the sound of your mother's stirring porridge, and in the morning breeze that no longer bites." Outside, birds were calling one another back. On the snow-covered roof, sunlight sparkled like crystal. Children from nearby houses laughed aloud, sliding on patches of ice left on the hillside. The adults split firewood, the crack-crack echoing, like the heartbeat of the village. Freya nestled into her father's arms and whispered, "One day I'll travel far like you." Leif looked at her, light brushing softly across her rosy cheeks. "Perhaps, but you don't have to go far to find something great. Just keep your heart open, and remember to pause and listen, even when the world is very, very quiet." Next door, Eirik's grandmother was sharpening a small knife, preparing slices of smoked meat for breakfast. Her hands trembled, but her face was peaceful. Everyone in the Viking village, young or old, was a piece of a larger tapestry, a never-ending story. That afternoon, the whole village gathered at the central longhouse, a great wooden hall, where village meetings, feasts, and the coming spring rituals took place. The elders told stories. The young practiced instruments. Children played hide-and-seek around wooden posts. The fire crackled warmly, golden light resting on every face. Everyone carried a tale of their first winter, of a near-death sea crossing, of love during the sacred festival of Freyr. Night slowly descended. Snow melted into droplets falling from eaves. The sky glowed faintly pink in the west. No more gloom, only hope remained. On a bed of straw, Freya had drifted into sleep. Leif pulled the fur blanket gently over her and watched the flickering flames in the hearth. He thought of his own father, who once told stories just like this, sitting here, with the same wind outside. And so, another generation would carry on. A cycle, like the four seasons. Spring, summer, autumn, winter, and then spring again. Some journey forth, some return. Some tell, some listen. Some sleep, some dream. And you, who are listening to this story now, you too are part of a thread that stretches far. From long ago. Let your eyes close gently. Don't try to hold on to this story. Let it melt in your hands like snow. Brief, tender, and just in time. Outside, the moon is rising. Its light spills through the mist, like a silver blanket draped over the ancient forest. The breeze whispers through the leaves, like a good night blessing from the Vikings of old, wishing you a peaceful night. And if you dream, may you dream of dawn in Vinland, where waves are gentle and the sky is no longer cold.